Welcome to the Infinite Wealth Podcast. I'm Anthony Faso, and fortunately or unfortunately, my co-host Cameron Christensen is on a much-needed vacation. And you're probably thinking, uh-oh, Cameron's not here to defend himself. Anthony is going to roast him. But you know what? I didn't roast him at all. And if you're thinking, oh, it's probably because Cameron's not here to defend himself, so Anthony's taking the high road. I wish that is the reason, but really the reason I didn't roast Cameron is because, you know what? It's a lot more fun when Cameron's right here, right? And when I can see Cameron get uncomfortable or laugh or smile or get mad, that's part of the enjoyment of roasting Cameron. So this interview is just strictly business. What this interview did remind me of is a story of way back in college, not that far way back, but I had wanted to do a triathlon. The problem was I really didn't know how to swim, right? I could doggy paddle across a pool, but you can't really doggy paddle across a lake. Thus, I took lessons. And when I got there, of course, I was a little nervous when it's the first time I'm there in my little Speedos. They were kind of little. But I started, you start checking out, right, sizing everybody else up. And there was another guy in the next lane over to me. And he's got me by probably at least 20 years, maybe 30, 40 pounds. I'm like, okay, at least I'm not going to be the worst guy in the pool. But I was wrong. When I went and swam just to the edge of the other edge of the pool, I'm over there just literally panting. Right. And I look back to think I'm going to see the guy in my lane next to me, but he wasn't right there. In fact, he was way ahead of me. The guy had almost lapped me on the first lap. So I was the worst guy in the pool. But that's when I realized that it takes to achieve those goals. It takes more than just learning and just knowledge. Because believe me, I had actually read books on swimming. I had the technique down, but I didn't know how to physically do it. That other guy, he knew how to execute. And that's why he was literally swimming laps around me. And how many times have you seen this in the business or personal world where somebody who doesn't have the skills or the education or the experience that they can still outperform others? And that's because it's not just only about the knowledge. It's more important about the execution. And that's what makes the 12-year program so unique, is it's not just about planning. It's more importantly of having the execution. Now, Brian Moran, in addition to reading the book, he's been an executive for some large companies like PepsiCo, UPS, had his own consulting business. And through that, develop this 12-week system. And what Brian has talks about is, because if you're like me, you may be thinking, man, I really don't have time to plan and to plan through the 12-week year. But one thing Brian had pointed out, if proper planning actually will actually save you time. And he talks about, we can't necessarily control the outcomes, but what we can control is our activities. So what he teaches us to focus on, not so much on the outcome of what happens, but what are you doing? Because that's what you have control of. And we didn't talk about it in the interview, but this brought back to mind is if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail, right? And you may have heard one of my biggest pet peeves is when somebody tells me that knowledge is power. I think knowledge is a potential of power. We all have that knowledge, just like we all have that knowledge of what it takes to lose weight, but you just can't read about it. You have to execute. You have to take action. And with this podcast, we talk a lot about achieving your goals of financial freedom, right? So your passive income is more than your monthly expenses. Well, in order to do that, you need to take a little time. You need to plan for it. And then you need to take some action. to achieve those goals, they're not just going to happen themselves. You need to be intentional in doing that and following programs. Look, the 12-week year program is a great program, and I'm following it, but it's not for everybody. But what is for everybody is some sort of a program. You want to achieve your goals, you need to start taking action, and you can start by listening to this interview with Brian Moran. Enjoy this episode. Okay, Brian, we are so excited to have you here on the show. Been a big fan of your concepts and your books for many years. Now, for the people that may not have heard of the 12-week year or heard of Brian Moran, can you maybe tell us a little bit about your story and how you got here?
Yeah, happy to. I started in the corporate space. I started at UPS, paying my way through college, and they promoted me into part-time management. I was getting a degree in physiology, could be a strength coach. And they offered me this job. And I thought, at first I thought, no, I'm not interested in that. But then I thought, I never know what'll happen. So I took it, really enjoyed it, got a chance to work with a guy who was a great coach at the time, which was, that wasn't even in the vernacular back then. But really decided I wanted out of Michigan, want to be in Southern Cal. So I moved out there, and UPS doesn't transfer that way, right? They'll transfer you and they say, pal, you go here, but it's not like, hey, I want to go here. And they go, oh, sure. So I left there, got in with PepsiCo, joined a consulting firm after that, and ended up vice president of sales for a $1 billion retailer. And I think I was 31 when I got that job, and really enjoyed it. But the chairman who owned the company and I really didn't see eye to eye. So we had decided to move back to Michigan at the time to be closer to family. And there was an opportunity to invest in a startup company, which we did. But I ended up running that thing because I left the job with the the big company, started out as an entrepreneur, had always wanted to do my own thing. But it really wasn't, this business wasn't the one I really had longed to run. This was a healthcare business, still own it today, but not involved day to day. So I started doing some local consulting and working with different CEOs and leaders. And long story short, really kind of think through, what's the value I'm going to bring? And at first I thought, hey, we're going to be able to bring them some new ideas, some new techniques, things like that. And, Anthony, I realized, man, they've got a lot of great ideas that they're not even using yet, right? You go into those organizations and there's training programs on the shelf and they're packaged. They're probably great programs if they just implemented them. So what I saw was the real need wasn't another system or technique. It was a way to execute. And so started really looking at what it takes to execute at a high level and the fundamentals of that. And that's really what led to the whole concept behind the 12-week year. It started with the fundamentals to execute, and then we were doing that in the context of an annual environment, which is how everyone works, right? Setting annual goals, building annual plans, breaking them quarterly and monthly and weekly. And we just found that although people got good results with that, they didn't get what they were capable of. And we came across this concept called periodization, which is the athletic training technique that we felt like, wow, that's the breakthrough we needed. That's where we literally redefined a year as 12 weeks. And so that's where the 12-week year came about, added that to the fundamental disciplines and principles that I've been working with. And that was kind of the accelerant to help people perform at their best.
Now, Brian, why is it? Because this just seems all mental, whether you're doing a 12-week or 52-week. Why is that so much different or better?
Yeah, well, the first thing about the 12-week year is it isn't just a program, it's a mindset shift, right? It's a way of operating. And so what we found and what people experience in an annual environment is just this illusion of time. It's really easy to put things off. Talk about how in January, December looks a long way off. And so in an annual environment, you'll see people, maybe they start out the year slow, maybe they start out gangbusters, but they fade in the middle of the year and they sort of trudge along, and then along about the end of the year, they go like crazy. And we just saw that the way people operated that way. And it was because of the time frame, and no one had ever questioned it, right? It flowed naturally and no one had ever challenged it. But what we saw in that was just too much opportunity to put things off. And so we worked with a lot of salespeople and we still do. And we do this exercise where they take their best month last year and multiply by 12. And it'll be 4, 5, 6 times what they did last year. And they'll say, well, hey, that's not fair. I had some exceptions in that month. We'll say, okay, take your third best month, not even your second. It'll still be two or three times what they did. And so what that demonstrates is that people have the capacity to create a lot better results without learning anything new, with just being more consistent with the execution. In the annual environment, although annual plans and annual goals help, there's a serious impediment to you performing at your best if you're working in an annual cycle.
Gotcha. Okay. So what I'm hearing is execution is key, right? Because
that's the foundation of everything we do. It's not enough to know, right? People that are smart, that have great ideas, but the world doesn't care about what you know. It only rewards what gets implemented, what gets executed. So everything we do is designed to help our clients perform better through more effective execution, whether it be in their personal life, their health, their fitness, their marriage, their relationships, their spiritual growth, or whether it be in their career or business.
Well, a lot of plans seem to be focused more on one attribute, whether it's a social or the spiritual, or mainly a lot of them are more on the business. Why is it important to also look at the other areas as well?
Yeah, probably the majority of folks that work with us come primarily for their business, but we take a very holistic approach. Right? You're one person. And if your personal life's working and your career sucks, that doesn't work so well. If your career is thriving, but your personal life sucks, that doesn't work so well either. And because the 12-week year fundamentally works in any area that you want to get better, it's really easy and kind of natural to apply it in both your business and in your personal life. And I think when you do that, there's greater benefit, because there's some things in my personal life, like my fitness. I don't need to get a bunch of people on board with that. Like in business, I gotta, provide value to others. I gotta make sure that they're getting value. I've got to sign them up. I got to enroll them, that type of stuff. When it comes to my personal health, it's more in my direct control. And so I think there's this opportunity to experience it where I have direct control over it, experience it in areas where I just influence the outcomes I'm after. But it works equally well. And so, we're always looking for kind of that holistic approach that says, things are working the way I want them to across all areas of my life.
Well, Brian, you've had some great exposure onto some large companies, and then I'm assuming in your consulting business, you're more some mid-size and some small. Is there some attributes or some things that you notice that determines the difference between like a very high-performing company versus one that's just mediocre?
Yeah, there's a lot to that in terms of companies, but a lot of it is, what I would say, if you're going to create a high performing group, whether it's a group of 3 or it's a group of 3,000 or 30,000, there are some structures that have to be in place regardless of what you value. So whether you value customer service or innovation or whatever it is, but you need clarity of expectation. Right, at the vision level, at the goal level, most importantly, at the action level. You need transparency with respect to execution. Are we doing it or not? And then we need evidence. Is it working or not? And so those 3 structures are critical. And I think that's what makes the 12-week year so effective within teams, is if you're applying the 12-week year, it brings those structures into play. Right? There's clarity on all of that. There's transparency, there's evidence. And so it creates the structures that allow an organization to perform at their best.
Okay, great. With a lot of in your book, you talk a lot about mindset, and as opposed to just like actually doing. So why is that mindset so important?
Great question. I think life is between the ears. Whether you're an athlete, I mean, the Olympics just finished up, right? You watch those athletes. I mean, athletically, they're all probably similar. What makes the difference is what's between the ears, and it's same for us in every area of life, right? Your actions and your outcomes are always an outgrowth of your thinking, and so your mindset is where everything starts. And the challenge with that, Anthony, is we're usually unconscious of that, right? We're pretty conscious of our actions. We're pretty unconscious of our thinking. But that drives everything. It absolutely drives everything. So if you think about the 12-week year, it is first a mindset. It's embracing 12 weeks as the year. And some people would say, well, that's just quarterly. Well, no, it's not, because quarters are a part of a whole. The 12-week year, that 12 weeks is the year as a standalone. And the more you embrace that in your mindset, your thinking, the greater impact it has on your actions, the greater impact it has on your results. So whether we're talking about every one of the elements we work with, whether it's planning or scorekeeping, whatever, there's a thinking aspect to that first, that if we don't get the thinking aspect right and aligned, then the actions don't follow. Right? If I see the world as a dangerous place and people are going to take advantage of me, there's a certain set of actions that grow out of that. I'm not very outgoing. I probably look over my shoulder a lot. I'm maybe on an extreme end of that, I'm paranoid, versus I see the world as a safe place and a place where people are willing to help, and the completely different set of actions. That's the only thing different is the mindset. And so the mindset is key to everything.
If your goal is to have your passive income to be more than your monthly expenses, then you need to check out our summer series, which is why we entitled it Your Path to Financial Freedom.
Our summer series consists of 3 webinars where we're bringing on industry experts to share some of the best passive income business models that we've come across. We are putting them all here together to help you build wealth and create passive income without the risk of Wall Street.
See you there.
Take care.
Brian, why is planning important? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people that are listening to this on this car. They're like, look, I'm busy. I'm too busy to plan.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard that before.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
What do you say to those people? I mean, sometimes I get in that myself. I mean, it's hard to take that time.
Yeah. The first thing I'd say is good planning saves time. That's one of the benefits of planning. If you plan properly, is it saves time, because you make the mistakes on paper, which is way less costly from a material standpoint, but also a time standpoint and an energy standpoint. So just having that roadmap of, it forces you to prioritize. Everything can't be a priority, and 12-week planning is structured different than traditional planning. So but it forces us down to focus on 1 or 2 of the things that are really most important. Because if we say yes to everything, we're really saying no to everything, because we can't do it all. There's limited capacity. We all have limited capacity. And that's true. And we work with organizations that have 100,000 people. They still have limited capacity. And so the more you stretch that, the greater the probability that you're going to be great at none of it. And so part of the planning process is really sorting through, okay, what is my focus for this 12 weeks, and then building out the roadmap for that, because all actions, all activities are not equal. And really thinking about what are the critical few, that the most important actions to drive the accomplishment of that goal, whether that be me losing 15 pounds and getting in shape, or whether that, hitting a sales goal or a revenue goal for my business.
No, you brought up a good point. Well, many good points, Brian. But I would tell, like, for me, I'm busy. Like, I'm always working. It's not like I'm out not working. But what I found is I'm not prioritizing my time. Yeah. I have a tendency to do the things that I want to do, right? Not the things that I should do. And by having that 12-week plan or having a plan, I think allows us to stay focused on the important things. And
yeah, there's big difference between busy and effective. Everybody's busy. Very few people are effective. And so what you'll find is that the person that's having 10 times the success you're having isn't working 10 times as hard or as long. It's probably physically not possible, but they're working different. And so the challenge, it's interesting coming out of corporate space. There are people in the corporate space that wear that like a badge of honor. I'm the first one in, I'm the last one out of the office. To me, that's foolishness, right? I'm not living to work. Work is part of life. So I'm looking, how do I accomplish what I want at work in the least amount of time? Because there will always be more to do. There's always stuff on my desk or in my email that I could stay and do, but I don't do that because in the big scheme of things, that's not moving the needle for me.
No, Brian, I've done, there's a lot of, different planning and concepts out there. One thing I thought was unique about yours, well, besides the 12-week year versus the annual thinking, was it started out like with your long-term vision. So if somebody is planning, why is it important to have an idea of what your long-term vision is when we're just really focused typically on the short-term results? Why is that long-term important?
Yeah, it's critical. Otherwise, you're laying track and perhaps heading in a direction you don't want to end up in. Right. So it starts with, what do I want? And we don't start with the business. We start with the life. What do you want your life to look like 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, so that we can align everything behind that. And then we bring that near term to the 12-week year and say, okay, given that, what's most important for the next 12 weeks? So there's this thread that has my daily actions, right? The things I got to do Monday through Friday connected to the longer term vision. And when we make that connection, that's a powerful connection. That's what gives me the impetus to go out and do the things I haven't done before. You said earlier, I get involved in some of the things I like to do, not necessarily the things I need to do or that will create the results. So the more that's connected to the vision, the longer term vision, right? That's my why. That's why I do those things. Right. Why do I go to the gym 4 days a week? Well, one, I want to be healthy. Two, I want to look good, but partly because, I didn't have my first baby till I was 40. I want to be around. I want to know my grandkids. Okay. So I have to work hard to stay in shape and do everything I can to, that's part of my motivation for why I go to the gym each week. And it's all tied to that vision. And if you're not clear on that, then it's really hard to sort out what matters most. And it's impossible to know how to use your time effectively, right? The first thing you need to know to be effective with your time is, what do you want? That's the vision question. And the next thing is, what matters most? That's the planning question. There's some other ones like that, but if you're not clear on those two, you can take all the time management courses you want. You're not going to be effective with your time. You might be more efficient, but it's going to be efficient on the stuff that doesn't matter.
No, I think really that forecasting and kind of seeing what my long-term life was going to be, it was actually helpful to me because, for one, it made me realize, that's not that far off. Like, it is obtainable if I work on it, if I stay focused on it. And one thing I thought was unique, one thing that going through that program, one of the questions is what is your purpose? And, normally when I'm doing goal setting, it's kind of all about me, right? What do I want to accomplish? And then kind of thinking about what my purpose is on this earth and what God wants me to do was it allowed me to kind of look a little more big picture. And it wasn't just focused on me. So doing that long-term vision was a great exercise. Now, Brian, one thing you recommend in the 12-week year is doing some daily activities and having a weekly scorecard, and then also having an accountability partner. So can you tell us why that may be important?
Yeah, let's start with the daily actions in the scoring. With the 12-week year, we're going to track. You're going to track your lead and lag indicators, your results. But as you know, as a practitioner of it, and being coached as you are, we score the execution. And the reason is because if you think about it, we don't control the outcomes, the goals. We desire those, we influence those. What we control are the actions. And so with the 12-week year, you have your goals. You also have your action plan, which is very different than most plans. Most plans are conceptual. They're not granular enough. They're not tactical. With the 12-week year, you've got granular actions. And again, the critical few, not a long laundry list, but here's what are the most important to hitting that goal. And because that's what we can control. That's what's creating your future. I'll say to people, look, if you want to predict the future, look to your daily actions. Think about that. If you want to know what your health is going to be like 3 years from today, look to your daily actions. You want to know what your relationships are going to be like 3 years from today. Look to your daily actions. You want to know what your income's going to be like 3 years from today. Look to daily actions, because that's what we can control, and that's what's creating our outcomes. And so that aspect is really critical in terms of understanding what's working, what's not working, and how I accomplish my goals. The second half of that, the accountability partner, is really hinges on understanding what accountability is and isn't. Right. So we have people say, hey, I just need someone to hold me accountable, which I would argue is one of the least accountable things you could say. Right? I'm trying to transfer my burden to perform to somebody else. And there's always somebody that's foolish enough to take that on. But if you understand accountability as ownership, then an accountability buddy is different, right? It's someone that I've agreed to be transparent with, to be honest with. They're not holding me accountable. They're just helping me confront the reality of my situation. And there's been so many studies done that show that going it alone, you're just stacking the odds against yourself. So if you have some sort of peer support that's healthy that way, right? Not someone who's creating consequences for me when I don't do what I'm supposed to do, but someone who's helping me confront the reality of, am I doing what I said I need to do as a producer, what I said I wanted? That can be a healthy partnership. And those are very effective at just helping us be more consistent with the action. That's the key. It's not about being perfect. It's about being more consistent.
Right. Yeah. Perfect. Now, one piece I really enjoyed in the book is what you call the emotional cycle of change. Do you mind explaining that to our listeners?
Yeah, it's a little easier with the graph, but the fact is that we go through different stages when faced with change, right? We start out very optimistic because we think this is a game changer for us. Mm-hmm. But truth is, we don't know anything yet. And as we start to get into the work of it, the heavy lifting, even with the 12-week year, right? Having to write a tactical plan, having to score my execution, having to work those actions, right? If we're going to create a different result in any area, Anthony, it's going to be uncomfortable because we're going to have to do things we haven't done before. And so as we get into that, quote, heavy lifting, right, oftentimes people bail. It goes from being very optimistic to pessimistic to thinking, man, this sucks. There's got to be something better than this. Mm-hmm. And then people go off in search of a new idea. And that's the cycle, right? I attend a workshop, I find a book, somebody recommends something, I get all fired up, I start to work with it, and I bail on it because I'm not willing to do what it takes. It's why vision matters, right? To have that compelling vision of a future that's bigger than the present, but it's also where the 12-week year, we have some process to help you push through that, because if you stay with it, what happens is you move out of that kind of pessimistic attitude, that mindset, and you move to a more, we would call, optimistic, right? But informed optimism, where at the start, we don't know what we don't know. Now we start to know, we start to realize that, hey, there's some work in this thing, but maybe I'm starting to see some of the fruit from my efforts, and it's starting to become reinforcing. And then ultimately, as I stay with it, the success and fulfillment comes from that. And I've run myself through that loop productively versus getting halfway through and bailing and going looking for something more, because that's going to tend to repeat itself over and over again. But the point for your listeners is, look, if we're going to create a result we haven't had before, it's going to get uncomfortable. It's going to get difficult because we're going to have to do things we haven't done before. And anytime we do that, there's a level of discomfort, there's a level of uncertainty. And so just be prepared for that. When you're feeling that, don't shy away from that. Don't bail from that. Actually lean into it. And you'll find yourself pushing through it.
Great stuff. Great stuff. So, Brian, if somebody wanted to learn more, where should they go?
12weekyear.com. So
Okay.
The number 12weekyear.com is where you can find us. We have everything from some freebies to some online training, all the way up through one-on-one performance coaching.
Okay. You also got this little book here.
That's true. Yeah. You can get that on our website. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it at Barnes and Nobles. Yeah.
It's on Audible as well. I know a lot of our listeners are listening to Audible. That's how I heard it the first time. And then you also mentioned 12weekyear.com /getting started.
Yeah.
What would
Yeah.
they find there?
Yeah, so it's actually / 12weekyear.com / getting started. Is a course we put together. It's 3 emails, a couple days in between, but it'll walk you through the concept of creating a vision, building a plan, understanding process control, how to score your execution, how to track your results. And so if you want to apply the 12-week year, it's a great course that's free. And then on the back side of that is every week you receive a tip from me to help you stay focused and stay executing. So 12weekyear.com / getting started.
And then, so you have the book that can kind of explain the concept, but then you also have some software, right? That helps track. You want to explain what we can get in the software?
Yeah, we do. So we have a planner if you're old school and you like to write stuff down, or we have online software called Achieve. And both of those just support the process. So if you understand the process of the 12-week year, then the planner or the software are really helpful because it's where you create your vision and house it. It creates the plan. The software automatically creates a weekly plan each week for you from the 12-week plan. It allows you to score your execution. It tracks all of that. So it's just designed to help you stay with the program and execute more consistently. So the people that use those tools do that. They execute more consistently. They get better results.
Okay. And then, so a lot of this, is kind of, we've talked about really more on the individual side. What if somebody is running a team? Is there something available to help a team with the 12-week year?
Yeah, everything from I do live and virtual workshops, half day, full days, that kind of stuff, to we have an on-demand team training product that has some video and a facilitator guide for the leader, has training videos and handouts for the team members. And then on an ongoing basis for the first 12 weeks, some tips for the leader in week 1 and week 4 and week 6 and week 12 and things like that. So that's on-demand team training.
Awesome, Brian. Well, I know you're busy. As you explained to me earlier, you just moved to the state of Arizona. So welcome to the West Coast and to the sunshine. And Brian, thank you for taking the time to be on the Infinite Wealth Podcast.
Yeah, my pleasure, Anthony.
Now go make it a fantastic day.